Hello. Today I'm here to present to you my research project, which is related to automated financial advisory services and the regulatory sandbox approach. Uh, First, I would like to start with the table of contents of my today's presentation. First, I would like to introduce why I wanted to work on financial technologies. Then I will explain my research topic. Then I will continue to explain the main elements of my research. Um, so financial markets are highly complicated and they have complex products and services. And the aim of financial regulators is to protect consumers and try to maintain financial stability and market efficiency. And to be able to do that, mostly my financial regulations financial markets are strictly regulated, and financial technologies can pose new challenges and risk to the market. So that's why it's important to have regulatory discussions about financial technologies. So what is financial technology? So financial technology can be defined as an integration of technology into financial services and products. There are different fintech sectors from cryptocurrency to robo-advisory services. So my focus is going to be on robo-advisory services, and I'm trying to assess the risk, and I will try to understand what's the place of regulatory sandbox approach to assess robo-advice related risks. So first, I would like to define what is robo-advice. So robo-advisors are automated platforms that offer financial advisory services, and they can help investors to pick insurance policies, banking products, and investment products. So mostly I'm focusing on investment part of robo-advisors. So there are four stages of robo-advisors. The first stage is the basic stage. So basically, there are listed portfolios, and based on clients' answers to the questions, one of the listed portfolios are offered to investors. Then there is the second stage. So here it's semi-automated platform. Um, Portfolio allocations are made manually, so we require to have some managers to help the online platform. So the third one is the decision-based algorithms. So these platforms can use machine learning techniques, and based on the also clients' answers, they can create portfolios and they can offer to them. And the last stage is self-learning artificial intelligence. It's the advanced stage, but it's important to mention that we are not there yet, and we don't know if we ever be there yet soon, because we are talking about really highly complicated services, because it's a self-learning artificial intelligence. So some scholars mention that the real robo-advisors are the ones at the stage of 3 or 4, because they can offer complex services and products. And nowadays, most of the platforms are at the stage of 2 or 3. So for the fourth one, we don't know it yet. And so there are some benefits and challenges of these services. So first, I would like to start with the benefits. So compared to traditional advisory services, robo-advisors can be less costly because it doesn't require human involvement as much as traditional advisors. And it's accessible for investors with low income, also medium income, because some platforms, they don't require you to have minimum investment, or they just have a minimum investment requirements. So it's accessible for many consumers, and it can also lower human bias. So when we are talking about human advisors, so there might be some biases based on maybe commissions, or they might have different biases based on different reasons. So these platforms can lower such risks. And also, it's convenient. It's accessible from anywhere. So if you have an internet connection, it's easy to receive robo-advisory services. So, but on the other hand, there are some challenges. So the first the important one of the important challenge is investors' risk. So these platforms are asking generic questions to every investors. So but some investors might require specific questions to be able to show their interest, or so these platforms might not be suitable enough to detect their risk preferences, like specific risk preferences or their needs. And there are also some concern about major shocks. Although these platforms have faced some downturns, market downturns, but they haven't never been tested yet under serious major shocks. So we don't know how they would react if there's a serious major shock. And during Brexit, for example, one of the important American companies, Betterment, has stopped its trading for a couple of hours because they didn't want their investors to to have some problems during Brexit because of the waves. So so this is the second challenge I can mention, and the third one is about herding behavior. So similar platforms can provide similar investment advisors to investors that have similar portfolios. So in the financial markets, we don't want everyone to do the same thing at the same time. So it can create herding behavior. So it can even distort the market. So these are the challenges of robo-advisors. So some scholars mention the disruptive future of robo-advisors. So can robo-advisors disrupt the market? It's a highly complicated question. So they mention that it's less costly. It can attract new investors, and also investors that are already receiving investment advice. They can use robo-advisory services. It's convenient, and they mentioned that it can reduce financial advice gap. So what is financial advice gap? It's the gap between investors who are already receiving services and the ones who might want to receive services, but they cannot afford to receive it. So because of these reasons, they mentioned that they can be disruptive. But it's important to underline the fact that not all innovations are disruptive innovations. And also for some innovations, it requires some time to disrupt the market. So, and for, in my opinion, it's too ambitious to say that they are disruptive innovations because they are still supplementing traditional advisory services, so they cannot provide complex products and services for now. Uh, s- uh, so um, now I want to present background to problem. So pacing problem is one of the important problems when it comes to technology, because technology is evolving fast, and regulators might not be able to follow them. So it can create pacing problem. Since firms may already aware of this problem, they can uh, I'm not saying that always they are using it, but they might use some innovation to circumvent regulations. So this can create regulatory arbitrage risk. So regulators might have different approaches to dealing with innovation-related risks. So they can have the laissez-faire approach, which is also called as wait and see. So they can just wait and see the challenges and risks, or they can just directly enact new regulations, or they can adjust the ones we already have. Or as a third option, they can establish innovation facilitators like innovation hubs and the regulatory sandbox. So for the context of my research, I'm focusing on regulatory sandbox, so it's one of the main elements of my research. But before explaining it, I would like to present my research question. So I can also explain the main objectives of my research better, maybe. So my research question is, what's the place of experimental legislation of financial technologies in providing an effective solution for investor protection in the scope of robo-advisory services in the UK and Canada. So it's a long question, so it's important to divide into different parts to be able to understand it better. So the first sub-question focuses on the main elements of experimental legislation. So experimental legislation can provide us the flexibility that we needed in financial regulations. So, and the second sub-question is about the effectiveness of regulatory sandbox approach. So effectiveness is more about to what extent regulators can reach their intended goals by using the regulatory sandbox. So I'm trying to understand the effectiveness of this approach. So what is regulatory sandbox? So it's a subgroup of experimental legislation. It provides controlled or testing environment for firms to test their products and services in the real world with real consumers. So, and regulators can also provide them some regulatory exemptions, but it doesn't mean that it's a regulatory free area. So why it can be beneficial? Because it's helps regulators and innovative firms to communicate. So regulators might not have enough knowledge about new innovation, so they can learn from innovative firms, and they can create maybe a more appropriate regulations that are not burdensome on innovations. And on the other hand, so since firms can ask, they can ask guidance from regulators, they can maybe they might have less incentive to circumvent financial regulations, because they might understand the nature, or maybe they can also um, try to follow the rules better, because they are going to understand it more. So this regulatory sandbox can encourage the evolution of new technologies and products. So for firms, even they can also see if there is a problem on their system, they can have time to fix it. But there are some concerns about regulatory sandboxes. Um, uh, the first concern is about fundamental principles like legal certainty, equality, and proportionality. And also, they are mentioning that it might be too costly. So, because it requires expert involvement all the time. So, I'm using comparative law methodology and law and economics theory. So, I'm comparing two countries, Canada and the United Kingdom. So why I am focusing on these two countries? United Kingdom is one of the important fintech hubs in the world, and they are the first country who has established regulatory sandbox approach. And the UK government encourages innovation-friendly regulatory approaches and competition. They even support the international cooperation of regulatory sandbox approach. And for the robo-advisory developments, it's also one of the important countries. So uh, if if you want to have a research about innovation facilitator, it should be the one of the country that should be analyzed. And on the other hand, Canada has a different approach when it comes to financial regulations. It has more risk-averse nature of banking system, and also consumer trust traditional services. So they have less intensive to change from traditional to fintech sector. So the adoption rate is lower compared to other countries. And there are some provincial initiatives, like in Alberta, there is a regulatory sandbox. In Ontario, uh, there is a launch pad, and in Quebec, there is a fintech lab, so they help startups to about they give some guidance, and they help them about the regulation. And so what might be the contribution of my my research. So my research is an explanatory research. So although there are many papers about regulatory sandbox and robo-advisory services, there are still unanswered questions. So for example, for the duration of sandbox itself, we don't know for how long we should keep regulatory sandbox, because if we keep it too long, it can create legal uncertainty problems. And if we keep it too short, then might be a waste of money and time, because regulators might not be able to reach their intended goals. And we don't know the effectiveness of regulatory sandbox yet, and what should be the next steps after regulatory sandbox. And for the robo-advisory services, as I mentioned, there are still questions about how they would react under major shocks, and also do they have potentials to disrupt the financial market. So if I may go back to my research question, so my research question tried to answer some of the unanswered questions, and so it might be my contribution to the literature by answering those questions. So if I may conclude my presentation, the market share of robo-advisors are not high enough to create systemic risk yet, but they still create certain risks that I mentioned during my presentation. So it's important to highlight these risks, and try to have regulatory discussions to see how we can prevent them. And in the future, if they become important actors, then it might be more difficult to have regulatory discussions about these services. And for the regulatory sandbox approach, it's a temporary tool, but it might be beneficial for regulators to decide about their legislative policies, and it can give them some opportunity to understand new technologies. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.